Greetings. Coming back at you here again with another watch related video. Today I'm drinking on some Shackleton blended Scotch whiskey. I usually drink single malt Scotch whiskey from Scotland. It has to be from Scotland. But today I'm just drinking this blended stuff. It's a little bit cheaper, I suppose. So I'm a little bit tipsy, but it's okay. What I want to talk about today. Today I want to talk about servicing cost estimates on vintage Rolexes. In particular, my Rolex is a Rolex 6694 reference, I believe. It's a Rolex Oyster Date Precision, or Rolex Oyster Date. The precision that is written on a lot of other Rolex watches. So it's a Rolex Oyster Date. Now, I didn't drop it off to. Oh, by the way, I'm wearing my Zin Classic watch right here. Very nice. Like I said, I wear it casually. It's a dress watch, but I wear it casually. I don't give a damn. Um, I was thinking about dropping it off to an official Rolex servicing center, but that's gonna be like, especially vintage pieces, you're looking at over $1,000 and more. And I'm thinking, like, for $1,000, I could get a really nice Hamilton. I could get a lot of brand new, Swiss-made watches. So I'm like, nah, that's just too crazy for me. So the main issue that the watch was having, which I noticed, was for around 3 years or so, it was running fine, accuracy was on point, no problems, no issues whatsoever. But then recently it's just been losing time in a significant manner, meaning for 6 to 10 hours it would run completely fine. But then after that it would be like not 5 minutes, not 10 minutes slow. It would be like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours slow. So I'm like, oh, that's not normal. But then I kind of held off on it. You know, I decided to wear a little bit of my other watches, whatever. I didn't see it as a big deal. But then another issue that I noticed with it was when changing the time on the watch, right? This is my Graf Zeppelin, right? Miyota movement, Miyota 8215 movement. It's an automatic movement, but I removed the rotor. It's just a noisy son of a gun, this watch was. So I decided to mod it. I took off the automatic rotor and I just used it as a manual wind. It was driving me nuts. It was driving me nuts. The sound of this watch movement, maybe not all Miyota 8215s, but in this watch in particular, you could hear this whirling sound every fucking time you move your arm or your hand or whatever, and it's so loud that you could hear it like all the way. Like my arm, like my hand or my arm would be down here, and I would still hear it, and it would drive me completely nuts. So I made it a manual wind. Screw it, right? Anyway, that's not the point. Let me describe the issue I was having with my Rolex. Let's say you're trying to set the time, right? Set in the time. This way, whatever. It's smooth. Very smooth, right? It's not going too fast. It's not going too slow. It has the right amount of tension. One thing that I noticed on my Rolex was that the tension was way... It was no tension. It was just moving way too quickly, right? You couldn't really control it too well. And then, like, let's say I wanted to set the time. Let's say I wanted to set the time here, right? I would put the minute hand here, and then I would click in the stem, and the minute hand would jump like either forward or backward. It wouldn't stay in place. So I had to put the watch this way and click it in this way if I wanted to somewhat keep position, right? So I'm like, okay, it needs a servicing. I didn't want to go to official Rolex service. Too expensive. I found a local watchmaker slash watch master, I want to call him, because he's been this is a family business, and it's been around for generations. They repair grandfather clocks, they repair all sorts of timepieces, everything, right? They worked on Patek Philippe's, they worked on, Audemars Piguet, they worked on super high class watch, they work on crappy watches to replace batteries, they do everything, right? They do everything. So they know their stuff. So I'm like, okay. I dropped it off and he says it's going to be around $475. A couple days later, he calls me and he says that the watch, I didn't tell him any of these problems. I just dropped the watch off. I'm like, oh, it probably needs an overhaul. I don't know when the service was done last, whatever. and he told me that the mainspring needs to be replaced, which makes sense because in a manual wind watch, you wind it up, and then the mainspring, not the hairspring, the mainspring holds tension, and then over time it releases tension to keep the watch going. So the problem in this and my Rolex was that the mainspring, I guess, wasn't holding tension well or releasing tension too quick, something like that. So that needed to be replaced to keep accurate time, you know, timekeeping qualities, whatever you want to call it. And he says that the stem needs to be replaced because the stem was completely messed up. I don't know how, I didn't mess it up. And when I first got the watch, it didn't really have any issues. So maybe over time, like winding or while adjusting times and stuff like that, maybe it's an old watch. I don't know when it was last serviced, so whatever. It needs a stem replaced. So he just said whatever. He's gonna do that. And he's gonna do a complete overhaul and stuff like that. So $475, not bad, not bad at all for like a vintage piece. I would expect similar prices for modern day Rolexes. But the thing is, like, it depends on the watchmaker, you know. Like, some don't mind working on vintage watches because for them, like, either it's easier or they prefer it, whereas the newer watch, they need to order special parts from special websites, whatever. It might cost more, so I don't know about the servicing costs for, like, these newer Rolexes, but for vintage Rolexes, 475 at a sort of a local watchmaker, not too bad. I'm going to show you guys the watch when it gets repaired. He says he's going to remove some of the rust. That's like, there's a little bit of rust spots in the case, whatever. So I'm going to show you guys the watch after the service is done. I don't know when that's going to be, but it's going to be probably nice. So if you're thinking about servicing a higher end piece, just check around a whole bunch of places. But most of the time, especially Rolex, if you send in a vintage watch for servicing, they like kind of replace things without telling you. They'll replace the dial completely, they'll replace the watch hands, they'll replace a lot of other things, and then it loses its vintage feeling. You know, it's just not the same anymore. But that's just kind of what they do. You know, sometimes they'll replace the crystal without it needing even to be replaced. You know, so official services, they got to make money somehow. So they tend to, you know, go a little bit overboard on servicing. But if you could find a local watchmaker with a lot of experience and you get to know him and talk to him, whatever, you could probably get away with like $350, somewhere around that range. Like I said, I was told 475. We'll see how it turns out. Anyway, guys, see you in the next video. Next video, I'll probably be talking about this mod that I made to the Miyota 8215, how I took off the automatic rotor, and how you guys could do it yourself. If you have like cheaper watches with Japanese or Chinese movements, and they make a lot of noise, which is kind of prevalent in cheaper end movements. It doesn't mean that the movement's bad. It doesn't mean that it's a crappy movement, because the Miyota 8215 is in a lot of watches and it's actually a really good movement. Easy to find parts, easy to replace, easy to work on, and it's a strong movement anyway. It'll run and run and run for many years without any problems. So if you have a Citizen watch, if you have like any, I don't want to say lower brand watches, but like if you have a watch that just pisses you off with the sound of the movement spinning, the video that I'm going to make next is probably going to show you guys how to combat that issue. I'll describe it in that video, because some rotors are harder to take off than others. Anyway, guys, peace out.